Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the sophomore album from the Underachievers, titled Evermore, The Art of Duality. God damn it, I'm kicking myself for not getting to this sooner. See, I actually heard about this duo before when I started getting requests last year for their debut album, and given the fall is always an overloaded time for album releases, I just skipped over them. And given that their debut album was getting solid but not exceptional reviews, I figured I'd put them on the back burner, and eventually I just never got around to talking about them. So when they announced their sophomore record coming out this year, I figured I might as well check in on that debut, and wow! As I said, I'm exasperated with myself that I let AK and Issa Gold get past me the first time, because this is the sort of smart, articulate, hard-hitting hip-hop that I really like. Breakneck, multi-syllabic flows that remind me more than a bit of Bone Thugs and Harmony, great chemistry between the two rappers, solid psychedelic leanings in the wordplay that have only become better articulated with each release. They broke through with their star-making Indigoism mixtape in 2013, and the better-written and tighter, but slightly less refined Cellar Door Terminus ut Exordium in 2014. I'm not sure whether it would have been enough to knock either onto my favorites list of that year, but they definitely would have been contenders because they're both great records. And as such, I definitely had some interest in their sophomore release, Evermore, The Art of Duality, even though at 15 songs looks to be an exhaustingly dense listen, which I think even they realize, because from the album art to the track listing, they look to be segregating this album to two distinctive parts, one light side, one dark side, if that meant anything. But regardless of all that, how does the album turn out as a whole? Well, unsurprisingly, it turned out pretty damn great, because Evermore, The Art of Duality is an improvement on their debut pretty much across the board. A smarter, more grounded, more articulate, better produced album that has more variety in flows, instrumentation, and even content. And for a duo that can occasionally write themselves into a corner with pseudo-spiritual drug rambling with a bit of a conscious edge, that's saying something. I'm not saying this is perfect. In fact, the more I've listened through this album, the more I'm quite certain that the Underachievers have a ton of potential that they should still unlock in the future, but they're definitely on the right path going forward and can bring a fantastic balance to the table in modern hip-hop. In other words, great record, highly recommended. And you know what, here's the funny thing. If you're familiar with AK and Issa Gold here, you're not going to be surprised by what you get on this album. From a technical rapping perspective, these guys hit a real sweet spot for me, because they got a well-structured and layered flows that just seem to go on for days and days, and yet don't get monotonous. Sure, it's dense, you're going to need a good 6 or 7 listens to pick up everything that they say, but they bring an incredibly potent balance between solidly interconnected lyricism and some fist-pumping hooks, adding them to the list of artists while the mainstream really can't use a lack of lyricism as an excuse anymore. And while I made the Bone Thugs comparison before, both Issa and AK switched things up enough to show some versatility that I wasn't really expecting from them. From the hard-edged aggression that Issa brought on Take Your Place that I would not have normally expected from the usually more emotive rapper, to the childish Gambino-esque flow that AK dropped on Brooklyn Way that showed he can move beyond some harsher material into more emotive, more melodic material. And while there are a couple flubbed rhymes, the two I know as mostly were on Brooklyn Way and Generation Z, for the most part the multi-syllabic structure makes it so easy for the bars just to roll over you effortlessly, which really enhances that psychedelic vibe. And it really helps that the production can support all that. This is where the duality of this album manifests the most, because the first half is lighter, sweeter, breezier, more typical of the stereotype of conscious hip-hop, while the back half is trap-infused, bass-heavy, dark bangers. And yet in both cases the melodies are sound, there's plenty of diverse instrumentation to keep all that momentum going. On the brighter side, I dug the acoustic guitar groove on Shine All Gold, the human melodic thrums in the bass that led to the glossier textures of Brooklyn Way and Illusions as the piano support that textured percussion, and even the saxophone that drives the melody on the old school vibe of the Dualist in a very jazz rap vein that I could have swear might have been sampled from Kenny G, and you proved surprisingly infectious. I really love that song. And yet on the other side, the Underachievers proved plenty capable of hopping on some more hard-edged bangers, with more of an outright symphonic swell like on Take Your Place and Generation Z. They managed to pull it off without sounding, well, cheesy or overstated. Somebody should tell Tech 9 how to do it. Mostly because the strings and the synths still have that rough edge and the trap percussion sounds hard-hitting. I will not say that all the instrumentation works though. Star Signs and Illusions honestly sounds a little bit busy, and then Off-Kilter's synth and strings melody on Moonshot just struck an odd note for me. Pushed the dissonance a little bit too far, but when you follow up with a great futuristic and spacey sense on songs like Stay the Same, it's really hard to complain. Part of it is that the production itself, not only are the transitions damn near seamless, especially at the shift towards darkness at the midpoint of the album, but they all maintain that dank, humid atmosphere where the contact high for this record is palpable. And you know, This takes all the lyrics, and I'll say it. Wiz Khalifa, this is what weed rap should sound like. Not that you're so stoned that you can't string words together or rap cohesively, but that pushes you to ascend to a higher plane. That evolution, that drive to constantly rise above and make that choice to break out of the toxic established ways built by a broken system underscores the first half of this album. And it's a natural fit for how much this record stresses the underlying duality of human nature between both its members and their own approach to rap. AK grew up rougher and found drugs in the streets. Issa went to good schools and yet found prescription drugs that came back with him to the hood. Both are aware that they could cater to their darker instincts to win mainstream audiences, and they kind of do so on the back half of this album, and yet they chose to stick with something of a more light, conscious road, all the while making sure to stress that darker side doesn't exactly go away. I wouldn't even say it's a struggle between good and evil on this album, so much as a struggle between the physical and the spiritual, and the Underachievers work that balance from their analysis of pop culture and reality television to black culture itself. And what really sticks out to me is the atmosphere of hope that underscores the entire album. Both men came from depression, wrote it in different sources of their lifestyle, but managed to work through hard work and perseverance. When no easy help was coming to them, they found their fortune, and they managed to push that message to the youth pretty damn effectively. Of course, they're also aware that there needs to be some teeth in it for people to actually buy into it. Most people don't tend to treat conscious rap the same way these days, which is why the much more aggressive back half of this album is where they're smoking blunts and smashing their rivals. They're still preaching peace to some extent, only with a closed fist to back it up. Now, this is a very, very tricky line to walk, and they do occasionally fall off message a little bit. Like on Generation Z, where they're supposedly speaking to the kids, and then AK compares himself to Adolf Hitler in terms of his world-conquering skills. Bit of a misstep there, buddy. Then in the next song, Illusions, where despite great flows, AK goes off on the final verse about stealing and screwing your girl. But one of the few places where women are mentioned at all on this album, and it's the last place where it's wanted. It really doesn't fit. But this circles back to probably my biggest issue with the album as a whole, and that's an overall lack of focus. I mean, sure, some of the bars they go on for miles, and the overarching album concept and ideas are really solidly executed, but for individual songs, the lyrical ideas could have to be a little bit more focused and refined, grounded even further in the human experience. We get similar themes and lines about song after song, about weed, enlightenment, smacking down rivals, evolving towards success, but this is an album that really could opt to tell more stories or feed into more of a tight narrative, ground this album and lend it a little bit more humanity. As it is, some tracks can kind of meander a bit as they hit on similar topics, which makes this album feel a little bit longer than you'd otherwise expect. There are some songs that have a little bit more of a unique instrumental identity that I appreciated, but not quite as many where the lyrics opt to do the same. And I'd argue they could afford to do a little more here to crystallize their themes and create real shining moments, or really great songs that really stand out. But look, as a whole, this album really is great. Hard-hitting lyricism, psychedelic instrumentation that can still manage to hit hard with really good production, and two MCs that have great chemistry and are displaying more versatility with every single project. It's a dense album to really unpack, but I definitely think it's worth it, which means I'm giving this a light 8 out of 10 and definitely recommend it, especially if you're a hip-hop head who longs for the days of tightly written bars. For everyone else, folks, if you want all the more evidence that hip-hop can still go hard as hell and remain lyrical all the same, this is your answer. Check these guys out. You won't regret it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.